In the case where one network, one SNO, wants to query another SNO, it wants to find is, do you have any data about David Lansky in your network? It has to know how to ask the question about me, about where my data might be. It has to have some identifiers about me, has to know where to ask. It's not going to ask every network across the country. It'll probably ask the Indiana network and the New Mexico network and perhaps the Walgreens pharmacy network, if we know enough to shape it. This is from a scaling point of view, this is an unresolved dimension of how this will end up working. But the same query goes out to all the SNOs saying, do you have anything on David Lansky? Here's his date of birth, here's his gender, here's his last known residence. It will then return the locations of my records. Then the querier, the person asking for the data, has to go back and knock on the electronic door of each place where my records are and say, can I please have David Lansky's records? Now, some of those places may be containing data with very sensitive information about me, like my alcohol treatment history or my reproductive health history, or something, my psychiatric history, something that I may be very sensitive about sharing to any old inquiry across the network. So they may have higher or lower levels of protection to release data about me. So we are leaving it in this design to the local data holder to decide whether its criteria have been met to release data. So it's not a blanket permission to send data across this network. Our view has been that data is best managed where it was originally captured between typically a patient and a provider. They should retain the control over sharing and releasing that data. So that's why the data is not centralized, and it's why you don't knock on one door and suddenly get everything, but you have to essentially electronically negotiate for it with the permission of the patient or the appropriate party. So here's a quick little animation of how this works. This down in the lower left here, we have a doctor who happens to be in Mendocino, California. Now he is logging into a browser in Mendocino. He types in the patient demographics. Now what he's going to do, this goes too fast. He's going to send a query up to his local health record exchange, which says Mendocino HRE in this picture. It will then send the query up to the record locator service and out through the ISB, across the dashed line to the right, into the next ISB, which happens to be in Indiana, and it'll go down into the Indianapolis system, look for records about the intended patient, and when it finds them, it'll send them back. I don't know what these arrows are doing, but that's the intention. He's going through a local bridge, out to the foreign bridge, in this case Indiana, down into the local index. When he finds records that qualify, he then goes and retrieves those records, and they end up being back in his screen, back in the lower left there.